host favorite for Get a Clue readathon. Get a Clue for Battle of the Girl Bands. Hi friends, my name is Brittany from Brittany Loves Reading, and today I'm starting a new weekly themed reading vlog, and for this week I am going to do a challenge video. It has been a long time since I've done the 24-hour timer challenge. I did it, I think, almost a year ago now, and my channel was a lot smaller. Nobody knew who I was, so let's try it again. So I am going to set the timer on my phone, which I will screenshot that right now, the countdown for 24 hours. Every time I'm reading, I will hit start. And every time I stop reading, I will hit stop, and we will see how much I can read in 24 hours time. I'm gonna do this with a little bit of a twist. What books am I going to pick from for the 24 hours? Well, this month is the Battle of the Girl Bands, and I am a host for Team Cheetah Girls, and a lot of my friends, my good booktube friends, are hosts for this readathon, and every single one of them have picked a host favorite. So I am going to read the host favorites for this 24-hour vlog. I am going to read them and read some of my friends' favorite books, which may be nerve-wracking for them. As a person who gives recommendations, I do understand that when you give a recommendation, you're like, I love this book. You really hope they also love it so they can trust you. So like, I understand that that may make them nervous that I'm going to read their favorite books, but I'm excited to read their favorite books. And even if we don't align, that's okay. We're still all good friends and we won't all agree or disagree on books, but I am really hoping to love all these books, because the ones that I have chosen, other than one of these, I did pick one of these because it fit a prompt that I was having a hard time filling for Battle of the Girl Bands. And it's the only one of these that I hadn't heard from and wasn't on my TBR, but we'll get to that. We'll get to that one later. We're not starting there. We're starting with a book that I have had my eye on for months. It was in a book haul months ago. I was so excited to read this and I haven't gotten to it yet. And then dear Julie from Keep Calm with Books and Coffee put it as her host fave, and I'm so glad because I finally get to read Godkiller. I finally get to read Godkiller. I have wanted to read this book for so long. The cover got me. I was in the bookstore. I saw this cover. I know nothing about this book, but that cover is gorgeous. And the name Godkiller just went, what kind of fantasy is this? Like, I need to read this. And I put it in a book haul. I didn't read it. I watched Julie read it on sprints and things. And I was like, do you like it? And Julie's like, it's fabulous. It made me want to pick it up when Julie was reading it, but it just didn't work out. So this month I told Julie, when it was a host favorite, that if I did not read it this month, they could yell at me. Like, yell at me, everyone. Everyone needs to yell at me if I don't read this. Well, here I am. I'm starting the 24 hours off strong with Godkiller. I really hope that I like this. Do I know anything about this? No. Other than that, gods are forbidden in the kingdom. That's what it says on the back. And I'm assuming we kill them. The title gives me that opinion. Is that what happens? I don't know. But I am so excited. This cover is gorgeous. Plus, I feel like the second book in this series is coming out very, very soon. And I need to know what it's about. I need to know about this book so that I can read that book when it comes out, because it's beautiful. The second book too, I'm going to put a picture of it here somewhere. The second book is gorgeous too. Like, the covers are fantastic. And I'm really enjoying fantasy this month. I've been reading a lot of fantasy this month. So like, I'm just going to stay in the fantasy mood and read Godkiller. So let's go start. Let's go see how long it takes me to read Godkiller. I have no idea how long this is going to take because it's not huge, but I feel like the audiobook is really long and I feel like the print is really small. Yes, the font be tiny. So the book is small, but the font be tiny. So it's going to take me a minute to get through this book, but I will check in with you at least by the halfway point. Then we'll go from there. Hi friends, it is the next day and I have read for almost 3 hours. Not as much as I wanted to get done yesterday, but it's as much as got done. And we are now at about 21 hours left on the timer. In that time, I read 13 chapters of Godkiller and got to page 110? Yes, 110. And I am in love with this book already. This is such a me book. As soon as I dived into this, almost like 2 chapters in, I was sold on this book. This is a complex world system. There's a lot going on, but I love our characters and it is really giving me Little Thieves vibes. If you know, I read Little Thieves for Amazing Readathon last year and I loved it, gave it 5 stars. I read a 500-page book in like 2 days. And this book has the vibes of Little Thieves. And it just is giving me those Little Thieves energy, which I love. So if you liked Little Thieves, I think you would also really like Godkiller. In this book, we follow Kessin. Kessin, as a child, the fire god attacked her family, and she was the only survivor. Her father got her out of the building that the fire god had set on fire, and he sacrificed himself to the god of water. Obsidian, I think was his name. Don't quote me on that. But anyway, the water god. He sacrificed himself in place of her and said, take me, take my life and save her. And that's what happens. In this fire, however, she does lose her leg. And now fast forward to the current timeline. She is a god killer. She is wreaking revenge on the gods for what happened to her family. But also the king has declared that the gods are not allowed to be in this land. He's told people to kill the gods. He wants the gods gone. So that is what she is doing. She's working kind of not on behalf of the king, but under this order to kill the gods. And I love this representation in this book because obviously we know Kessin lost her leg as a child. So now she is an amputee. She has a prosthesis made by one of her friends who we do meet in this book. And even something happens to the prosthesis, so she has to go to her friend to get it repaired. And we see her in a wheelchair for a little bit of a time as well in this book. One of her friends also is deaf, so we have signing in this book. And I find in fantasy especially, I mean, we're getting better at seeing representation in books, but I feel like in fantasy, we're really missing out on this kind of representation. We focus on these characters who are perceived strong, able-bodied people. But Kessin is so strong and so capable. She's a god killer and she's an amputee. That's just a part of who she is. And it's such wonderful representation. I also love, like I said, there's sign language in this book, and I love seeing that as well. And these are both things that I don't feel like we see that much in fantasy. So I'm loving that. There's also LGBTQIA+ rep in here. So there's a lot of fabulous things happening in representation in this book. So Kessin, while coming to a place to kill a god, to get rid of a shrine, meets a little girl called Inara. And Inara has a problem. She has a situation. She is bonded with a god, a very small god named Skedi, who at this point in the book, I am in love with. Skedi is fabulous, and I love Inara, and I love Kessin. Kessin takes Inara, and she is going to help her become unbonded from this god. Inara is not really sure she wants to. She knows she kind of needs to because in this society, gods are considered horrible. So she needs to kind of remove herself from Skedi, but Skedi is her best friend. So there's a little bit of, turmoil in this decision for Inara as well. But Kessin's like, gods are horrible. We need to get this god off of you. They can only go so far apart before they actually have pain because there's like this bond between them. So they can only go like a few feet apart. Skedi is pretty much always kind of attached to her. So now Kessin and Inara and Skedi are going on a journey to get this bond severed. On this journey, they meet Elo, who is an ex-knight for the king, and he is on his own journey as well, which I won't go too much into because it is not in the synopsis of this book, so I think it would be a spoiler. But they are now together, and I'm interested to see what happens now that this ex-knight who used to kill the gods, that was his job when he worked for the king, and this god killer team up to do their two various things they're trying to do. Kessin help Inara, and Elo do what Elo's trying to do, which again, not going to talk about because it's not on the back of this book. Elo is on the back of this book, but it just says a secret quest. So I will leave the secret quest a secret and not talk about it. But as of right now, this is 5-star energy all the way. And I'm going to finish this today because Libby is going to steal this audiobook from me tomorrow. So today is a reading day. Today is a finish Godkiller day. That is pretty much my only goal for today. Finish Godkiller. So it's the next day, and did I finish this book this morning with literally 20 minutes before Libby snatched the audiobook away from me? Yes, I did. But I completed it. It is done. It took me just over 7 hours to read this book with the timer, so I still have 17 hours left, just under 17 hours, to read some more host favorites, which is great because I'm really excited and enjoying reading some of my friends' favorite books because we're starting it off on a high note with a 5-star read of Godkiller. This was so fabulous. Julie, I can see why you love this book so much. It just confirms to me that Julie and I really do have very similar reading tastes. I already suspected that from seeing books that we have both read before, but this just solidifies that in my mind. As well as I buddy read this with Leandra, and talking with Leandra back and forth with this book even enhanced my enjoyment of reading this book because there is so many discussion topics in this book and there is so much to cover. You would think this book was so much chunkier than it is just by how much the author packed in here. It's such a fast read, it doesn't feel long in that regard, but the amount of commentary and world building and character building that is in an under 300-page fantasy book is actually amazing to me. The talent and the caliber of writing that it takes to do that is top tier. I had such a fabulous time discussing all the themes in this book with Leandra, and we have just been messaging back and forth for the last 2 days and having a fabulous time. Since filming this, Leandra has put out an entire review video on Godkiller, and it is linked in the description box. I cannot wait to read Sunbringer, which is the next book in the series. It comes out in March, and I'm going to go pre-order it today. I did not pre-order it because I hadn't read Godkiller yet, didn't know if I wanted to continue. The covers are gorgeous, but I am trying not to buy sequels of books that I haven't read yet, so I was refraining from getting Sunbringer, but now I need Sunbringer. This was a 5-star read, and the way it ended, I need to know more. I need to know what happens next with my characters. I need to know what's going on. I've already talked about the representation in this book, so I won't go into that in too much more detail, but I do love how it's continued through the book because sometimes I find we give a character a characteristic and then later in the book we forget that we've given the character that characteristic and it kind of goes by the wayside. And there were moments where if you were an amputee, you would have to make an adjustment to what you're doing because of being an amputee in the certain situations that Kissin was in. And the author took that into account. There's other moments also in this book that would be on the verge of spoilering, where it would come up, not that it came up, but in the context to which it came up would spoil something. So I'm not going to talk about that, but it does come up. And it is really great representation in my opinion. I'm obviously not an amputee, but I felt like it was very well done. And I wish I would see it more in fantasy in general. But as I said, Leandra and I were both really blown away by the themes in this book, the themes of these gods. So the gods are being killed or have been killed, depending on which gods you're talking about. And Kessin is a god killer, but what we learn about the gods as we meet different ones is that as people believe in them, as people give them offerings, give them their thoughts, their feelings, give them little tokens, the gods get bigger. They grow. They get more power the more humans believe in them. And there's a commentary on how we as humans really are the ones who make gods and who make what is important be important. And where we choose to put our thoughts and our focus and what we feel is important gives it power. And with anything, when we give anything power, it grows, and power ultimately corrupts anything. And that was such a strong theme in this book, and I found it so interesting. And you can look at it from various different ways. You could look at it in a religious way. You could look at it in an importance way. What we give our time to makes it important and gives it power, because we have a limited amount of time and we have finite time and we give it to various things. And we give it to what we feel is important. We give it to our family. We give it to our jobs. In my case, I give a lot of my time to this channel and I love doing it, but it gives it power in my life. And it means it is a controlling thing in my life because I give it the time and the attention and the importance in my life. I don't know if that makes sense or if I'm explaining myself well, but it was definitely a theme that I caught running throughout this book. And it was a really interesting commentary on where we place importance in our life as humans and where we place our time gives anything power in our lives and a kind of hold on our lives. So it's important to know where we place our time and our importance in what we are looking at in life. And I really just felt that throughout this book. And obviously it's in a fantastical setting, and that is just one of many themes and commentaries and amazing things about this book. I would highly recommend picking this up. This book is fabulous. And if you like this type of folklore, mythology type of fantasy, you will love this book. I really do believe that. What this author is doing is very intentional. You can't write a small fantasy book like this and not be extremely intentional with what you're doing. And the intentionality is what I really appreciate. The characters are great, the plotting is great, the commentary is great. And even what I've talked about is just one small commentary in this book. Leandra and I discussed the heck out of this book. We discussed so many things. I could not even slightly cover them all in one vlog clip because I would have had to been updating every chapter to cover it all. And also I can't talk about things that are spoilers, but I really, really enjoyed this book. It ends on somewhat of a cliffhanger, but that's okay because the next book comes out next month. So I'm excited to find out the continuation to Godkiller very, very soon. I think Leandra and I decided to read it in April. But now it is time to move on to another host favorite. And this time I'm going to be reading Danny's host favorite, which is Thornhegde by T. Kingfisher. This is on my Timmy's TBR for the month. I need to read it anyway. This is on my 12 Friends Recommend 12 Books because Danny put it there. So this needs to happen. So I'm just going to do it next, even though it's very small and I'm going to be able to knock it out very, very quickly. I probably will not update you in between because I will probably just finish this book in one sitting tonight on Tuesday night sprints. That's kind of my plan. So I will chat with you tomorrow morning after Tuesday night sprints. If I'm not done, I will check in with you mid-book, but I have a feeling I'm just going to finish this all tonight on Tuesday night sprints. Happy Valentine's Day, friends. It is Wednesday. It is Valentine's Day. I know a ton of people are doing sprints today for like Palentine and Galentine, and I'm excited to get some reading done today. But first, I need to update you on how yesterday went, where we are in the timer, and all the things. Late last night, I stayed up after Tuesday night sprints, which I never do, and I finished Thornhegde by T. Kingfisher. I did not stay up to finish Thornhegde. I was up for other reasons, but I did end up finishing this book in just over 2 hours of reading time according to the timer. We are now just under 15 hours. So we are still not at the halfway point, but we should hit the halfway point today, which is perfect. Middle of the week, middle of the challenge. That sounds good, right? This book, I ended up giving 4 stars. Danny was correct. I did really like this. This was a really great dark fairy tale retelling. It wasn't super dark. It's kind of on the edge of dark, but it's a retelling of Sleeping Beauty, and I really did enjoy my time with this read. There's not much I can talk about. It's only 111 pages, and most of that is not in the synopsis. So a lot of it is spoilers, but I will give a little bit of my thoughts on this book. This did stick to the Sleeping Beauty retelling and following a different character. We don't follow Sleeping Beauty. We really barely see her in this book. We follow Toadling. Toadling, on the day of her birth, is taken by the fairies and a changeling is left in her place. And the fairies raise her. She learns magic. She is human, but she kind of becomes this hybrid of human and fairy because she learns fairy magic. And then when she turns 15, she learns why they've taken her. They've taken her so that she can go to the human world and kind of protect and keep an eye on this human girl. Toadling does go to the human world, and obviously the girl that she is set to look after is our Sleeping Beauty. And for centuries, she guards the tower in which Sleeping Beauty sleeps in and protects the Thornhegde, which is this really thick, thorny bush and barrier to getting to the castle that Sleeping Beauty is in. She sees the world change as time goes on. She sees things like plagues and also the progression of society. She sees roads being built. That was really interesting to see kind of the change in time that Toadling goes through while Sleeping Beauty is just asleep in the castle. Like I said, it is a darker retelling. That makes sense with T. Kingfisher. So some things that are a bit creepy, some things that are a little bit sinister do happen, but I really did like Toadling. She was a really fun character to follow, and her story was really interesting and really atmospheric, and you definitely had those fairy tale vibes. This definitely makes me want to pick up more T. Kingfisher's fairy tale retellings because I really did have a good time with this. And I have read a T. Kingfisher in the past that I did not like, but that was paranormal horror. So this is much more up my street. And I will definitely be picking up Nettle and Bone. And I think the other book is Briar and Roses by T. Kingfisher at some point because I want more of this fairy tale vibe that T. Kingfisher has. T. Kingfisher's writing style really does fit that kind of classical fairy tale feel really, really well. However, it is time to move on to a new story, a new host favorite, and for right now, I have read a lot of fantasy this month. I have only read fantasy this month and one quick manga series. That is it. I have been fantasy heavy this month, and I've had fun with my fantasy, but I'm kind of ready for a fantasy break. So we are going to read Nell's host favorite, who is a fellow host for Team Cheetah Girls, and that is The Do-Over by Lynn Painter. Also, since it's Valentine's Day, this is perfect because this is a Groundhog Valentine's Day. Emily has a horrible Valentine's Day. It's described in the synopsis as a dumpster fire. It goes horribly. The next day she wakes up and it is Valentine's Day again and she gets to do it over. And I think she keeps doing it over until she does it right. So this is the perfect book to be reading on Valentine's Day. It's like I planned it. I would like to say that I did, but it accidentally happened this way. It is absolutely perfect to be reading, and that is what I'm going to be starting today. I am a bit nervous about this book though, because if you know in the past, Groundhog Day time travel books do not always work for me. I'm hoping that this one breaks the mold, but I do tend to find them a bit repetitive because you keep reliving the same day. We'll see if Lynn Painter can do it right. And I'm excited to dive in. I really am excited to read a contemporary romance because I have read so much fantasy. So let's see how far through this I can get today. I doubt I can finish it today, but I definitely will get at least to the halfway point in this timer challenge because I only have to read for a little over 2 hours today to do that. That is very doable. And I will chat with you when I get a bit more through the do-over. So friends, it has been a couple days since I spoke to you. It is now Friday, and on Wednesday, after I talked to you, that was Valentine's Day. I had every plan of starting the do-over and getting a lot of reading done. And I started, and I maybe read a page when I just realized I needed a day. I needed a mental health day. I needed a day to do very little things. And I just hung out with my family and just took a day off. And that's what I did. So I did no reading on Wednesday. Yesterday was Thursday, and I started the do-over, and I got to page 137 in the do-over. And what we have learned, and what we probably should have known, especially since I kind of knew this going in, and I even think I mentioned it in the last clip, is that the groundhog trope just does not work for me. I do not enjoy living the same day over and over and over and over again. It is too repetitive for me, and it's just not something that I personally enjoy. On top of that, I read a Lynn Painter earlier this year, and it was just okay for me, and I didn't love it. But a lot of people had told me that it wasn't her best book. So I wanted to try another Lynn Painter, give the benefit of the doubt that maybe that wasn't the best book and I would like other books. And that doesn't seem to be the case either. And I think the reason, and I said this in my review of the other book, Betting on You, that I read, is that I am not the target audience for Lynn Painter's work. They are very YA. It is very young people having very young high school problems. And I'm just not the target audience for that. There's nothing wrong with this book. I am not the target audience. This is targeted for younger readers. And for me, I just don't care about these people's problems and what they're doing, and the way they're reacting to their problems is very young adult. It just isn't working for me. Those things are all very personal preference things, or because I'm not the target audience. So there's nothing wrong with this book in any sort of way to be like, oh, this is what's wrong. Very personal preference, very much that I am just aging out of YA, and I don't care about these young people's problems. This follows Emily, and Emily on Valentine's Day has a lot of things happen. She has a car accident at the beginning of the day. She finds out she doesn't get her scholarship. She finds out her boyfriend is cheating on her. Like, a lot of things happen. And then she realizes that she has to keep redoing this day and trying to make it right. And one of the things that she's trying to make right is to stop the boyfriend from cheating on her so that they can still be together. And I feel like there's too much sitting with that. I think we need to just realize, you know what? you've only been dating him for 2 months. We need to just move on. And I understand that she's young. I don't love that we're sitting with it for so many Valentine's days. It's been a few. And I want her to realize, and I want her to be a strong character and realize that she deserves better. Her friends are even telling her she deserves better, which I do appreciate. But I want her to realize that for herself at this point. She needs to realize that she deserves better than this guy that is just not, committing to her, even though he's saying he's committing. And I do feel like we're just sitting with that boyfriend for much too many Valentine's days, if that makes sense. And again, I do understand that she's young, but I do also say that that's something that maybe young readers need to see a character stand up for herself. And I'm sure she will as the book goes on. I think I'm just getting to that part of the book now. So I'm hoping that's the case. I'm hoping that we see her stand up for herself now. And I think we're just getting to that. She's kind of gotten to the point now in the book where she's done so many Valentine's days that she's like, I don't care.
I don't care anymore.
I'm just going to do whatever. I'm going to eke my frustration out on everyone, and I'm going to tell everybody off because there's no consequences to my day. Like every Groundhog Day trope tends to do. Like eventually they get so frustrated and they realize they can do whatever they want. That's kind of where Emily is now. I have just over 12 hours left on this timer, and we need to get going. We are halfway through this, not even. We need to get some reading done. We're going to finish this today, and then I'm going to start The Tiger's Wife. If I have time, I really hope I have time because I need to get a chunk of this timer done today. That is the goal. That is the plan. If I come back here tomorrow and tell you that we're only at like 10 hours of this timer, you need to yell at me. I would love to be well into single digits on this timer when I come back to you tomorrow. So I'm going to go read. It's only almost 10 a.m. Almost 10 a.m. So I'm going to jump in. I'm going to get this done. I have sprints today. I have things going on. So let's go get some reading done. Hello, friends. Yesterday, I actually got a good amount of reading done. I got a good chunk finished. I finished a book. I started another one, and I only have 8 hours left on this timer, 8 hours and 10 minutes, but just 8-ish hours. So I did finish The Do-Over. This book, I'm going to give 3 stars. Everything I said at my midpoint wrap up, I still agree with. I don't think I'm the target audience for this book. I think if I was much younger, I would have enjoyed it a lot more. I don't love the Groundhog Day trope. I just find it so repetitive and it just does not work for me. And that is a personal preference thing. Right after I talked to you, we got very close to our last Groundhog Valentine's Day and actually sunk in to our last Valentine's Day and did that Valentine's Day for quite a bit of the book. So that was nice to stay in one day and stick to one timeline for a certain amount of time. Plus, we did get to spend some time with our actual love interest, not this cheating boyfriend that we kept kind of trying to stop from cheating. And we spent our time with Nick, who is our actual love interest. He is actually the person who's driving the car she keeps getting in a car wreck with at the beginning of her first Valentine's Day and subsequent Valentine's Days. Fate seems to keep making her run into him, and we find out why, because he is our love interest. And I did really like Nick. I did really like Emmy, and I did really like the explanation of why the Valentine's Days were happening. That was really interesting to me, and that all got it to be a 3-star rating. And then I started The Tiger's Wife, which is by Taya Orbrit. And this is Leandra's host favorite for Battle of the Girl Bands. I am very excited to read Leandra's host favorite because Leandra and I really do agree often, especially in this genre and style. This is listed as historical fiction with fantasy and magical realism. I love a magical realism book, so I don't read enough of them, but I always do enjoy it when I get to read them. The synopsis is a bit disjointed on this book, so I didn't really know what I was getting into for the actual story and plot for this book. And I am currently 77 pages through it, and I have a little bit of a better idea, but I feel like it's a bit complex. So even at this stage, I don't really have a full idea. So this follows our main character, and I forget her name, and I do not have the book with me. So I will either stick it here or I will tell you in the next chapter. But she is a doctor, and she has gone away to give vaccines to orphans at an orphanage. While she is traveling to go away, she gets a phone call from her family saying her grandfather has died and passed away. Her grandfather and her have always been very, very close, but he has had cancer and has known he's had cancer and has known he is dying. and she is the only one who knew. They didn't tell the rest of the family for various reasons, and now he has passed away. But even though he has passed, there is a mystery around his passing. He passed while he was traveling. He told his family that he was actually traveling to see her, but she's like, he was not coming to see me. So why was he traveling? And we don't really know why at this point. And also, since he was traveling while he passed, they need to ship the body back to his family from whatever, morgue or what have you has him. All of his belongings are missing. Everything is missing, including something that's very close to our main character, a book of the Jungle Book that he carried with him at all times. And he used to take her to like the zoo in their town. And it was really something that they shared together, the love of animals. And also they were both doctors, so they had that in common as well. She kind of became a doctor because he was one, and of his stories that he used to tell her. And in this book, we actually see him telling her these stories. We have these flashbacks of him relaying stories that he has seen. And right now, I'm just hearing him tell her his first story. And the timeline is kind of all over the place. So we have the current timeline where he's passed and missing. And then we have her as a little girl hearing these stories that he told her. And his stories are from World War II. He was a doctor in World War II. And he has stories based around that, not all attached to the war, but around that timeline. He's telling her those about 10, 15 years after the war has ended, when she is a little girl, and now she is an adult. So there's kind of 3 timelines at work here. In the audiobook, it switches narrators to him and a man telling this story. And it is like you are the main character and he is telling you the story. And it is such an interesting audiobook that I'm really enjoying, because it almost felt like I was her. The way he keeps talking, he'll be like, oh yes, Natalia. And I'm like, Natalia, that's her name. There we go. Brain just had a moment. And I would just be like, yes, I am her. I am a little girl and my grandfather's telling me this story. And I loved that. I'm in the middle of the first story. And the first story got a little bit of a magical fantasy component, but like mostly within folklore, not really in actual fantasy. So he is gone to this little town. They're having a lot of people dying, and he assumes it's tuberculosis because that's what the symptoms kind of lead him to believe. But then they have this man who claims he is undead, and even they're like, he's undead. We killed him and then he came back to life. He keeps popping out of this coffin. So they're like, is he a vampire? And they're trying to like convince this doctor, who is a man of science, that this man is a vampire. And we're going through this story. So I don't know if he's actually a vampire in the story or what is happening, because it is a magical realism book. So like vampires could be there. Or is it just like a folklorish depiction of a vampire, like what, history has assumed vampires would be, like these mysterious deaths or mysterious people surviving things that like people just wrote off as vampires. So I don't know if it's like a folklore vampire or like an actual fantasy vampire. I have not really figured that out yet. Could go both ways because again, magical realism book, but also it is very steeped in like myth and folklore. But I'm having a fabulous time with this book. So what exactly is the synopsis of this book? It's, like I said, it's a bit disjointed, and you can kind of tell from the different bits of the synopsis that I'm pulling from and different bits of things that are happening. But the writing is really, really interesting. And I think kind of how it's all going to come together as I read the book, but we'll see. What I suspect at the moment is that these stories that were being told, somehow, somewhere amongst the stories will be what kind of happened to him now. What is this mystery that is about his death and why he was traveling, and maybe some things about his items that he had that someone might want. I don't know if that's the case, but that's what I'm assuming at 70 some pages in, that somehow the stories will make sense and be impacting the current timeline. That's just kind of how historical fiction works and historical fantasy and magical realism works anyway. So that's just what I'm assuming. That is where we are right now. And I'm going to go grab my coffee because that's what I went out for. And I've been talking for 10 minutes. I'll edit this down so it's not 10 minutes long, but I apparently had a lot to say about only 75 pages of a book. So I'm going to go grab my coffee and I'm going to get to reading and see if I can read the rest of The Tiger's Wife today. That's kind of my goal. I think I will need to pick up another host favorite to finish the timer. I do not foresee it taking me 8 hours to finish The Tiger's Wife. I did not have another book chosen, so I need to look at the list and see what I want to do next. I'm thinking Stud in the Stacks. I've seen a lot of people reading Stud in the Stacks in sprints, and that's Amy's host favorite. So actually, I don't need to look. I think I'm going to do that one. But first, I still have like 200 pages of The Tiger's Wife to read. So let's go do that. Let's grab a coffee. Let's do that. And let's get to reading. So it is Sunday morning and I have finished The Tiger's Wife. I finished it last night, just before bed, did not continue on to another book. And I currently still have just over 3 hours on the timer. So we are definitely going to be reading another host favorite. I already mentioned in the last clip that I'm going to be reading Stud in the Stacks by Pippa Grant. This is Amy's host favorite. But first, let's talk about The Tiger's Wife. So I ended up giving The Tiger's Wife 3 stars. I was really enjoying part of this book. And then there was part of this book that I didn't love as much. And that was the part about the tiger's wife in and of itself. So in this book, we follow, and I kind of said this, the grandfather who has now passed, and we're trying to kind of figure out the mystery of that passing. We follow him telling stories to Natalia, and the timeline is a bit difficult to keep track of because we have the current timeline, we kind of have when Natalia is a child, we have before she's born, and we move through this timeline pretty rapidly, and we're in and out of different sections. So you definitely have to be paying attention to know where we are and where the stories are taking place in the life of the grandfather, and also how they now play into the current timeline that we're in. And I think that's where I started to get a little bit lost with this book, is where these all connect. So I do understand where I kind of told you about the undead man, the potential vampire, and how he plays into the current timeline. That I got. And that storyline I really enjoyed. I liked hearing about the grandfather and his kind of comings in meeting this undead man and testing this undead man, because as a doctor, he's like, this cannot be true. And he's like testing to see if he's really, you know, undead. Can he not die? Like, there's some tests that are happening. That I enjoyed a lot. The part about the tiger's wife lost me a little bit. So that happens also in the past of the grandfather when he's a child living in this small village. A tiger escapes from the zoo, comes into the village, and this woman in the village who is, I believe, the butcher's wife, who has had some horrible things happen to her. And it gets very violent in that part of the book. So keep that in mind. Maybe check trigger warnings. There's a lot that happens to this poor woman. And she befriends this tiger in a way. And then it becomes a little muddled for me of what happens. But there's a little bit of potential myths and legends about what happened to the tiger's wife and how she became friends with the tiger. And I got a little bit confused. During that part of the book. And most of the second half of this book is that storyline. Then at the end, I didn't really completely understand what that part of the book had to do with the grandfather's passing and the ending. I didn't fully connect those two plot points. And also the ending was a bit ambiguous in a way that I felt kind of unsatisfied with. That being said, I did like the writing style of this book, and I really did like the audiobook with this grandfather like telling the stories. I did enjoy that part of the book a lot, and I did enjoy the other storyline with the undead man. So there were things about it that I really enjoyed and I was really interested in, and there were things that I was kind of muddled and confused about. So 3 stars, and we're going to move on to our last book and finishing this timer with Stud in the Stacks. Stud in the Stacks, I assumed, was a closed-door romance because it was Amy's favorite until I pulled it up and there was a naked man on the cover. And then I got quite excited because I did not think that that would be the case. Because Amy does not read a ton of smutty romance, does read a little bit, but not a ton. So this threw me. I messaged Amy and I was like, is this closed door? I'm okay with it being closed door. I just kind of want to know going in, but the cover does not seem so. And Amy's like, no, it's not. And I'm so glad we have time for this because this is a sexy librarian smutty KU book. How this was not my top pick, I don't really know. I'm so glad we can fit this in. The audiobook is only 7 hours at regular speed, so I can probably get through most of this book in the 3 hours that I have left. I should be able to get very close to the end of this book. And after the heavier read I just had, I'm excited for a fun KU time. So let's go read about a sexy librarian and finish this vlog off that way. And I think that's just perfect. We've really had quite a plethora of different reads in this vlog. That's what I love about reading these host favorites, because there's a little bit of everything. We've had fantasy, we've had YA romance, we've had a retelling, a dark retelling, we've had literary fiction, and now we're on to a smutty KU romance. So like, this is perfect. This is fabulous. Let's go read and spend the day, a nice Sunday at home, reading about a smutty librarian. Hello friends, I don't normally end a vlog in a car, but that's what we're gonna do today. I have a ton of people at my house. It's a holiday, there's people at my house, and I went to get coffee for everybody. So we're just gonna end the vlog here. We're gonna finish it up in the car because it's quiet and my house is not quiet, and I can talk to you in coherent thoughts in the car today. So that's what we're gonna do. So here we are. I have finished the 24-hour challenge. I finished it with 80% read on Stud in the Stacks. I have not read another stitch of Stud in the Stacks since the timer went off. So I will finish this and I will put my full and final thoughts and my star rating in my wrap up for the end of the month. So look out for that. If you want to know more information, it'll also be on my Goodreads. So there will be places to find my final star rating on this book, but I will give you my thoughts on the 80%, which is most of the book. So, you know, I'll give you my thoughts. This follows a librarian, which for the life of me, I cannot remember this man's name. So that's fine. But he's a librarian, and at the start of this book, he's dressed up as Tarzan at a bachelor auction. He's gyrating to music, and people are bidding on him. This woman, Parker, bids, but she is outbid by Lila, and Lila gets to have her night with Tarzan the librarian. However, Parker needs a date, needs a fake fiance for her upcoming reunion, because she's going to see her ex-husband, who also went to high school at the same place, at the reunion. And her boss is making her connect with her ex-husband because he's like some sort of farmer and she needs him to work with her organic food company. And there's reasons for this, that her boss is like, you need to go get in his good graces again. And she doesn't want to show up trying to talk to her ex-husband, who has his life together apparently, without having her life together. So she needs a fake fiance. She contacts Tarzan and is like, will you be my fake fiance? And that's where we are. They fake date. They have feelings, they have some smutty times, and that is this book. This book, however, if the Tarzan thing didn't give you the first inkling that this may be the case, is satirical. It is not meant to be taken seriously. It is jokey, it's funny. There's a lot of times at the beginning of this book that I was laughing out loud. However, as it went on, it was longer than I think it maybe should have been. Considering this is supposed to be kind of satirical, or at least it feels that way, it's even listed in Goodreads as like humor, I think it needed to be shorter. Now that we've had a certain amount of smutty times, and it was really funny at the beginning, the smut seems to try to be serious, where the first part of the book didn't try to be serious. So now it's kind of this weird middling ground where it is funny, but the smut is trying to be serious. And now we're trying to like maybe make the relationship more serious. And the smut has come off a tad bit cringy because it's trying to be both serious and funny for me. That's just my opinion. I could see why so many people would enjoy this because it is super funny. I just think that it's kind of running that line of trying to be funny and trying to be serious. And maybe I would just prefer it to pick one lane and be one or the other versus trying to be kind of a mix of the two. But I'm not disliking the book. Like I said, I've had a lot of times where I am laughing out loud. I just don't think the smut is written the way that I personally would have wanted it to be written. But that is the end of this vlog. I have read 5 host favorite books, 5 of them. There was some really high notes, Godkiller, Looking at You, and the ones that didn't score necessarily as highly were not bad books by any means. Obviously, my friends absolutely love them. They're more personal situations to me, like the groundhog trope is just not my favorite. So there was a lot of fun times. I really enjoyed reading all of these books and racking up the points for Team Cheetah Girls. Yes. But that is the end of this reading vlog. I am about to take a couple of days off of vlogging, and then I'm going to be vlogging 72 hours in the reading nook for next week's vlog. And I'm excited to see what those 72 hours holds. It is also going to be my birthday weekend, so you'll come along with me on some birthday things as well. So thank you so much for watching this vlog though. Have you read any host favorites for Battle of the Girl Bands or any of the books that I read in this vlog? Let me know down in the description box down below. Thank you so much for watching. Please like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.